So I've drawn out a picture in my head of what the world looks like today. And the entire reason our world looks like this is because we are still using the same decision-making process we used when we were cave-dwelling people. And when we were cavemen and women, our decisions are automatically, it's genetically embedded in us. We base our decisions on needs, desires, or problems. We do this as naturally as breathing. It's not something we consciously do. We are born with it. But we were born with it for a primitive world where our technology was sticks and stones, and we could do no harm to our environment making decisions like that. We didn't have to consider knock-on consequences of our decisions because there weren't any. If we fast forward through the invention of fire and our technology taking off, our technologies changed our social behavior, so every single one of our decisions started coming with potential knock-on environmental, economic, and cultural problems. And that's because you cannot make a decision for us culturally, economically, or environmentally without affecting all three of those things. So anything that affects our environment negatively will impact our economies and our societies and cultures negatively. So let's have a look. Our world today, social, economic, and environmental collapse because we focus our actions on our problems or needs or desires. So this is the world today. We've got climate activists, vegans, non-vegans, climate deniers, anti-hunting, anti-flying, pro-culling, pro-burning, anti-burning, anti-culling, plant trees, eat less meat, do this, do that. And these red lines are depicting the conflict. So everybody's fighting with everybody else. Vegans don't like non-vegans, non-vegans don't like vegans, non-vegans don't like climate activists, or so everybody has their own opinions, and it's just creating huge conflict. Anti-hunters don't like hunters, and there's just this huge conflict with no common context apart from problems or needs or desires. So we just have conflict, and these are some of the symptoms and knock-on effects of isolating any of these and reducing our actions to our problems. We have hatred, conflict, fear, economic collapse, confusion, leaderless chaos. And one of the biggest results of our environmental damage is that once we develop fire and our weapons and our societies started to change, we started to eradicate huge numbers of grazing, herding animals that were kept bunched together and on the move, trampling, aerating, grazing, fertilizing the soil and the grass and flattening it to form a protective mulch over our grass on the world's grasslands in arid areas. And those animals were vital in keeping the health of the grasslands. And we replaced their role with fire, which has led to horrific desertification. We also domesticated livestock and we grazed them unnaturally, which led to desertification. We also fenced off national parks and took the villages out, which also caused the unnatural movement of wildlife. So we have all these things leading to desertification, which has resulted in poverty, megafires, floods, drought, poaching, violence, mass immigration to cities, biodiversity loss, social breakdown, and climate change. Our rainfall is no longer effective, which is resulting in all these things. Our reductionist decision making with no further thought to the consequences apart from we need fuel is the rapid burning of fossil fuels. We developed GMOs, factory farms, because we wanted to produce food fast, industrial agriculture, carbon, methane. All these things are symptoms of this chaos because we just act without looking at the potential consequences all our decisions come with in this modern day with our technology. So I've drawn out what happens when we start to manage this complexity and make decisions that consider the social, economic, and environmental complexity that every decision potentially comes with. So what happens when you are using holistic management is, like I said, our decision-making process is genetically ingrained into us as naturally as breathing. So even though this is very simple, what I'll explain to you, it takes some effort because we don't naturally make decisions like this. So what holistic management does is we develop a holistic context in which to make our decisions. So we still have the same decisions to make. So we have needs, we have desires, we have problems. But when we're choosing an action for that decision, we now, instead of just going ahead with that action or looking at a part of the problem, we now check to see that it's in line with our context. And I'll just read the context out quickly. We want stable families living peaceful lives in prosperity and physical security, while free to pursue our own spiritual or religious beliefs. We want access to nutritious food and clean water. We want to enjoy good education and health, living balanced lives with time for family, friends, and leisure for cultural and other pursuits. All this is to be ensured for many generations to come on a foundation of regenerating soils and biologically diverse communities on Earth's land and in her rivers, lakes, and oceans, which will be brought about by our being ethical and humane to all life, being open, tolerant, non-judgmental, honest, and respectful, ensuring mutual respect and support for team humanity as we live with each other and our environment in harmony. So this context is something that, so you saw the chaos of the previous page where everybody's in conflict and fighting and arguing, but I guarantee that every single one of those people that are fighting and arguing because they want a better planet. And this gives them something that they can all focus on without being in conflict. So I don't think there's a human on the planet that wouldn't agree with a context like that. I don't think you would find a human on the planet that would say, I want to live in an unstable family, living a violent and poor life in not free to follow my own beliefs, and I want horrible food and filthy water, with no education, no family, friends, so, and bare ground and disaster. No human wants that. From the most ardent poacher to the head of the World Wildlife Fund, they want the same thing. It's just finding a common context to bring everybody together in their differences. So we've got climate activists, non-vegans, climate deniers, hunters, governments, anti-hunters, poachers, organizations, economists, all cultures, all religions, all colors, vegans. We've got, everybody can get in line with that while still respecting each other's beliefs. So this is how humanity will function when we unite and test that all our decisions and policies are leading all of us towards a global holistic context. So whatever your decision now, you don't just base it on a need, want, desire, problem without thinking about this. And what you want is every decision leading you towards this. And if it's leading you away, you look for a different decision. Now, you can't just suddenly change everything and the world will be amazing overnight. But what this does is, if you have two decisions that you're not sure of, there are context checking decisions, and you choose the better one. So it's basically always leading you towards a better decision until ultimately you can be where you want to be. So if you went into the supermarket tomorrow and you had a holistic context, you'd suddenly say, okay, hang on, where did this food come from? How was it produced? What environmental damage is done? So if it's meat, it'll be, is it factory farmed? Is it regeneratively raised? If it's vegetables, it's the same thing. Is it regeneratively grown, or is it using industrial agriculture where it's been sprayed with poisons, and so on? So we're just always making and being led towards our holistic context and stopping the fighting. We don't have to argue with people's personal choices. We just say, okay, that's fine. This is my context and I'm being led towards this all the time. And one thing I did want to point out in this is, I know how much people are anti-poachers, but the guy on the ground who is a poacher, if you come and visit Africa and you see the bare ground and the poverty, and there's conflict with wildlife because the wildlife and the humans are fighting over resources. The poacher himself is just trying to feed his family, and I'm sure most people who are listening to this haven't ever been starving and in a position where it's a matter of life or death where your next meal comes from. So I think it's important to realize that poaching is just a symptom of poverty, of bare ground, of lack of resources, lack of jobs, so economic collapse. All of these things are symptoms of how we've made decisions. And if you had a poacher, so I work with communal areas and we use this decision-making process and we use holistic planned grazing of their livestock to regenerate their land and rivers, and their crops are more healthy and everything without having to buy fertilizers or plow. So all their decisions are more environmentally friendly all the time and regenerative. If you took a potential poacher and said, here, we're going to offer you money to poach, he would not accept it because he's not going to risk his life if he's got food and water and security. So aim anger a little bit higher up the chain at the guys sitting in the big fancy houses and not at the guy on the ground because he's literally just trying to feed his family. So yes, I think we can all unite in our differences, and this is what we all want, and this is what we all need to focus our attention on. Rather than getting into conflict about our individual differences, let's focus on something that takes us way above those differences and into something we all want ultimately at the end of the day. And the only way we are going to get there is to check that all our decisions are leading us to that.